show. Sits down the front.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll introduce myself. I'm Dave Wells, Chief Engineer. Privileged position here. A great job, if you could call it a job. Bunch of boys in a shed playing with helicopters. Not really a job, but it's great. My background is engineering, obviously, in the Royal Air Force. I joined the Air Force in 1982. 3-year apprenticeship, engines, airframes. Spent 10 years working on Hawks at Chivenor, and I was lucky enough to move sideways onto helicopters at Valley. So in 1994 I started on Wessex, spent 3 years. I saw out the end of the Wessex for the RAF Search and Rescue, and then we saw in the Mark IIIs from 202 Squadron, the Sea Kings. Spent another 2.5 years at Valley on Sea Kings, and then I moved back to Chivenor on the brand new Mark IIIs, which were fantastic to work on, never broke, real good workhorse. And I didn't leave Chivenor until 2016. Left the Air Force in 2008 and moved onto Westlands, Augusta Westland at the time. I spent the last 8 years working for Westlands as a crew chief at Chivenor on Sea Kings. So spent most of my life working on Sea Kings and helicopters. A fantastic job. And I was lucky enough to meet Andrew when he brought his Whirlwind to Chivenor. I say lucky, we have 4 shifts, and I just happened to be on shifts at 25% chance of being on shift the day he turned up. We were chatting, put his Whirlwind away, and we looked after it a bit, and we were chatting, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to buy a Sea King." And yeah, of course you are. Because everybody's going to buy a Sea King. And then we kept in touch, and he phoned me and said, "Oh, I've bought 2 Wessex." "Oh, okay, would you like to have a look?" And of course I would. And like Steve, you don't want to get involved in anything. I know there's other places with helicopters that you wouldn't want to go near, and all my mates that have worked at other places or some other places go, don't do it unless it's properly funded and well resourced. And when I first came to here, this was a brand new building with just 2 Wessex parked in it, and you could see from that minute, that actually this is the place to be. It's a fantastic place to work, and the resources, although I always keep telling Andrew I'm not here to spend his money, should we need stuff, it is provided, we get it. So that's how I've ended up here, and I've been here nearly 2 years now, and it's always a pleasure to be here. We're all ex-military, so as you can imagine, PC's not quite our thing. And there's pongos, wafus, crabs, they all work here, and we all get on fine. And if you hurt yourself, it's hilarious. Right, so that's me and how I've managed to get here. For the aircraft itself, it's been sat in a shed for, not yet, quite easy, 32 years. And you can imagine it smells a bit corrody, it's a horrid smell, and stale fuel, stale oil, rusty magnesium or corroded magnesium. Not in the greatest of shape, but to be fair to the Navy, they have absolutely looked after it to the best that they could. Been moved around a few places, and apart from its last 18 months, it was stored inside. All the deterioration services have been carried out. For a 32-year-old magnesium aircraft that had been near the sea, not too bad. First of all, we had the 2 aircraft, 771 and 761, and I spent a week just surveying them. under the floorboards, down the tail, in the cockpit, under the engines, just to see which was the best of the two. Once it had been surveyed, we formulated a plan, a depth of servicing, and then we started pretty much. So first slide, and as the guys, every screw was corroded, so you can imagine stripping it apart, try not to damage anything, and we didn't throw a single nut and bolt away, because you never know what you're going to need or as a pattern. So it's a laborious process. It's not quite like stripping an old car out. Every single nut and bolt was recorded, where it was from, it was bagged, it was tagged, it was stored. So we had every single rotten component off the aircraft. Next couple. So this is the inside of one of the fuel tanks, and it'd been empty for 32 years, but they'd had actually oiled it and greased it inside, oiled it inside to look after it. These were built, these tanks were all made in 1964 and 1965, and they're the ones we're using now, and that's only because they've been looked after. Next couple. Corrosion in the bottom of the fuel tank bays, that was dressed out, replaced. Another one. Top of the gearbox mounts. Now that stuff is, it's like a putty they put in to stop the corrosion getting in. Nightmare to get off. It's all carcinogenic. It's all stuff you don't really want to be playing with, and it's horrible to remove. But we have to remove it with a non-metallic scraper, try not to scratch the aluminium underneath. That's a main gearbox foot, so that's quite an important part of the aircraft. Keep going. All the components were removed, the head came off, all the gearboxes came out, all the drive shafts, the control rods, cables. Quite a lot of the wiring was removed that wasn't needed anymore. Next one. But you can see from this, the terminal blocks, surprisingly, were good. It took electricians 2 or 3 months to continuity check and insulation test every wire we were using, and there's probably 2 or 3 miles of it. Tons and tons of fuses and electrics boxes. We did have some small fires when we put power on, but relatively few considering the age of the thing. The cockpit being stripped out, and once you get into it that far, you're kind of thinking, I hope we get it back together again. All the control rods, all the engine control rods run through the centre of it, so it's not always the easiest thing to work on. When they were built in the old days, manpower and labour was cheap, so it didn't matter how hard it was to get to something, because there was enough blokes that would be able to do it. Nowadays, ergonomics in aircraft is a big thing. Next one. Turborotor hub. So every component was stripped down, mic'd, measured, rebuilt. Those are brand new bits on the spindle, control links. So everything we had new, we had to replace. We replaced everything we couldn't replace with new. We've sourced from museums. Air and Ground up in Stafford gave us 40 odd pallets of spares, Wessex spares. It's a lot of the stuff they've given us is stuff that never broke, which is why it's still available. But we've replaced the stuff we had with new stuff wherever we can, and all the old stuff has been NDT, non-destructive tested. We've had it X-rayed, eddy current. So we know that everything we've put back in is airworthy. Everything we put back in is a genuine Westlands part, or from the manufacturer OEM. So we've got no patent parts, no spares from anywhere else. This is the start of the rebuild, and that was when Steve has big days. For us, this was the first day we put something back on. And this is nearly a year in, so you can imagine the first day we've come to work at the beginning of a week, and we're not taking anything else off, we're not rebuilding anything in the workshop, and we started putting that bit in. And that goes under the main gearbox. It's a nightmare to get to if you get it wrong and you have to take it out again. The students, this is the coupling gearbox going, a massive piece of kit, another big day. We have 2 students of work experience most weeks during the school terms, and they're fantastic help. There's a lot, they can't sign for anything, but for cleaning stuff down, it's all stuff anybody can do, but with limited resources, there's 5 of us here full time. These guys have been invaluable, and it's great for Paul Cheetham over there from the college to be able to supply us with the 2 students a week. And when they do it as their work experience, so it's good for them. When they come in the door on the first day, you can see their eyes get big, because they're live aircraft they're working on. They're not in a factory environment, not a training environment. They're live aircraft and they're going to fly. So everything they do has an effect later on. And it's, for some of them it's a bit of a shock, but they've been brilliant. And we have got Amber here. Amber's now on an industry placement with us for the summer, and she goes into Leonardo's as an apprentice on a degree in September. So it's fantastic. And stuff like this gives them an insight into, I won't say the real world, but into how aircraft work and regimes we put working on aircraft. This, believe it or not, is the inside of the tail rotor gearbox. I'll put this up. This gearbox is done 12 hours before it's taken out of service. And the grey marks on the side are grease marks that were put on, and you put them on to line the gears up. So everything's shimmed and within a couple of out. And that was still in there, so this gearbox has done so little work. The grease is still in the gearbox on the teeth from where they've shimmed it up 32 years ago. There's one of the fuel tanks. They've all come out. We've inflated them. We managed to find a fuel tank test set. They're all blown up to half a PSI. They're covered in soapy water, left for half an hour to make sure they don't leak, let down, and then they're refitted. Again, it's all a laborious process. The students have been involved in that, helping out. They've done absolutely everything that can be done. They've been involved in all of it. As you can see, not a very ergonomic aircraft to work on. We're lucky we have to have a go-no gauge for engineers. If you don't fit through it, you're too fat, you can't work here. As Foz hates having his photograph taken, so every opportunity he gets his photograph taken. Replacement parts, the green part there is obviously the wrong colour. That came from the FAA museum at Yeovilton. We've had to swap these bits of mag alloy. You can imagine mag alloy, salt water, they're all corroded. That's the only one we managed to find in the country that isn't rotten. We've swapped it out from, when you go into the Fleet Air Arms with the dummy deck and you go through the Wessex, it used to be fitted to that, but it's now ours, and they've got our old one. Paint touch-ups, corrosion, because the magnesium alloy, it's done remarkably well, but we've had to rub back some surface corrosion, treat it, respray it. The whole aircraft is mag alloy, so to still have it, if you look at, if you Google images of Wessex in fields, they're all just holes. So for them to keep this in this condition, very little corrosion, it's been great. Paperwork. So everything we've removed, cleaned, refitted has been logged. 282 work cards, some of them run to 400 or 500 pages long. And that's every single nut and bolt, every torque loading. We have to use specific manuals, we have to use correct tools, all the tools have to be calibrated, and that has to be done every year. So everything we do has to be top quality. All the manuals we use as well. Obviously this is the best Wessex manual you can get, written by Lee, who's in there somewhere, over there. Still available from Amazon or eBay for a couple of quid now. Probably can't win sales, but a great read and very valuable. Next one, Cameron. But once we'd finished, and that was just over 14,000 man hours in 18 months to strip it and rebuild it. It was rigged, and as an engineer, when you're rigging a helicopter, you normally do 1 or 2 blades you'd replace for whatever reason. To replace everything from the shell up, and rig every single joint of every single control board and check every part. It's always a bit nerve-wracking for the first time it spins up, and we double-checked, treble-checked all the figures. So we did a clinometer and measured the angles of the blades and fully down, fully up, fully left, fully right. Everything has to be checked, double-checked, treble-checked. But the first time it spins, that's 72 feet, 400 pounds of blades in total, but it's nearly 3/4 of a ton of head spinning. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking. So the blades were fitted, spread. We tracked the blades using an infrared gun, pointed at the tips of the blades, and it measures the mean between the 4 blades. And our first time it spun, it was less than an inch, which is okay. And we've now got it down to half an inch on the ground. So 72 feet diameter, it's half an inch split. Which, for the first go, just like the guys who fitted them and rigged them themselves, fantastic job. The guys here are all hand-picked, and they are, I think, the best team ever. So testing, like Steve said, once we've started testing, it is nerve-wracking. It's not a car. You can't just pull over. So it was slow and progressive. And we had many days out there. You mentioned a fuel leak. The fuel tanks are split into 2 parts. There's 6 tanks in each part, and it was one joint of 6 tanks. And because it's fuel, it never comes out where it's leaking, and it tracks 6 feet from the back to the front and come out the front. Clearly, we thought it was the front tanks. We bid in, changed all the seals, must have cured it, started up again, and it leaked. And that's quite, like, it is depressing. You expect things, you have to be pragmatic about it. It is annoying at the time. Get everybody in the right place at the right time. Steve's got a full-time job. So getting him here, getting all the guys here, and you pull it out and it leaks and you have to put it away again. It's quite irritating. But we found it in the end and cured it. So, and the team effort, Steve mentioned the team, I'm sure Andrew mentioned the team, but for me the team is huge. It is the best team I've ever worked with, and I've spent 25 years in the military, worked with Westlands. Fantastic teams, but this team, it includes Leonardo's, as they are now. The support we've had from Leonardo's has been absolutely unbeatable. For instance, we borrowed their really expensive weighing gear to weigh the aircraft, work out the CG. We weighed the whirlwind yesterday. Everything I've ever needed, if I phone up the guy at Westlands, Andy Godfrey at Westlands, come in Bentley with John Dixon, have sorted us out. Absolutely everything we've wanted. The MOD, they're part of the team with Chris Page. Again, the go-to guy. If I phone up and I need something, all our workshop manuals have to be the latest amended state of that manual, or the CAA won't allow us to use them. We can use them for information, but we can't use them to do the job and sign the job off against them. Chris has managed to dig through archives, through museums, and we now think we have the latest edition of every Wessex manual ever published. And that includes component manuals. So if we take a component off the aircraft, we can't just take it apart and put it together again. We have to have a book to tell us how to do it and sign that component off against that book to say we've done it properly. So the team, the guy on the end there, Richard, is from Helitune. Helitune have lent us the gear to vibration monitor the aircraft. We've flown it with the gear on. If it vibrates, we have to change stuff. The head vibrates, we track the blades in to make them tighter. So the vibration signature is really important. For one, a pilot flying a shaky aircraft will be knackered at the end of it. The aircraft doesn't like it. It is 40,000 rivets in close formation, and they're all trying to part ways. So the less we have it shaking, the better it is for the aircraft, the pilot, the crew, everybody. So the rest of the team, air and ground, they've given us a stack of spares, and they still support us now. The museums, Moravia, no Bob's here, there's Bob. Invaluable source of bits and pieces. Weston-super-Mare, we've got Isla, Ren. Western-super-Mare, they've lent us some bits. We've had volunteers from Western-super-Mare help us out, with Annie, Rod, Sully. So the team for me isn't just the people here, it is nationwide. And every single one of them is an enthusiast. They don't do it because they have to, they do it because they really want to see this aircraft fly. Without any one of them, it just wouldn't happen. But as I say, Andrew, his passion has done this. He's managed to get the people to support us and shown what can be done with the right resources and the right passion. So, and that's about it for me. I've hope you enjoyed it. If anybody's got any questions, please fire away. Nothing technical either. Anybody any questions? Brilliant, it must be awesome. Thank you very much for coming.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, time's cracking on, so I'm not going to do my talk. We're going to just proceed. So it's probably the opportunity to grab a quick bite of lunch, but ideally we're going to be flying the Wessex